Nobody voted for this. We'll talk about that tonight. What that means when people say that. We're also going to talk to Ned Ryun. We're firing government employees. Kash Patel is about to do what? What's in this CR that just passed? All that and more coming up on I'm Right. Nobody voted for this. Have you heard any of the libs saying that in the past month or so? Of course you have. It's become their new thing. Whenever Trump does anything, they will say something along the lines of, this isn't what people voted for. People didn't vote for this. You can see it with the Department of Education. Came out yesterday, half the staff's getting fired. They're shutting down the building. You saw people all over the media. Nobody voted for this. This isn't what America voted for. And the irony in that, well, there's a couple ironic things about that. First, Donald Trump campaigned openly on all of these things. All of these things. You can get mad at Trump. You can love Trump. And I don't care how you feel about it. I don't care about it. It doesn't matter to me. But you cannot call Donald Trump a liar. Donald Trump campaigned openly on the most right-wing based general election presidential platform I've ever seen in my life. Every other Republican, including Trump the first time, after they win the primary, they kind of, I don't want to say moderate, that's not fair to a lot of them, but they really kind of tweak this and tweak that, trying to make sure things are more palatable for the norms and normas who don't understand politics. Donald Trump didn't do that at all this time. He won the primary, stormed through the primary with ease, and continued, while he was the Republican nominee, to talk about the elimination of the Department of Education, to talk about the draining of the swamp, to talk about taking possession of Greenland. It's not like Donald Trump was hiding any of these things. He talked about tariffs. You see all these people in the news right now, tariff this, tariff that. Right? Nobody voted for this. Donald Trump campaigned and said that's what he was going to do. So people did. But enough of that. I want to talk about me, the FBI, the intelligence agencies, Kash Patel. Nobody voted for this. I said it's kind of funny they say that for two reasons. The first I already went over, but here's the second reason. I know trends are a thing. Group trends are a thing. We can talk about that, and we do on the show. Men do this, women do that. White people do this, black people do that. Mexicans do this, Catholics do this, Mormons do. But we can generalize. That's fine from time to time. But you're an individual no matter who you are. Man, woman, child, old, young, your belief system, your skin color. You're an individual who makes individual decisions. So you really shouldn't ever say people didn't vote for this, because people vote for different reasons. I personally know a bunch of different people in different walks of life who voted for Trump for reasons that I won't say didn't enter my mind, but they certainly aren't what drove me to the polls. I know of a young couple, extremely health conscious. They are these fitness gym freaks. They just are. Hey, it's good for them. They're very healthy. They look fantastic. They raise their children to be fitness gym freaks. They're the couple, they don't, look, maybe they take it too far. I don't know. They don't trick or treat on Halloween. Right? No candy, that kind of thing. But who cares, right? It's their kids, their life. Very healthy way to live. Go ahead. They voted for Donald Trump because they'll make America healthy again stuff. Did that drive you to the polls? I saw it. I liked it. Didn't drive me to the polls. I'll be frank with you. Low taxes didn't drive me to the polls. And I hate taxes. You know what drove me to the polls? I was going to vote for Trump either way as soon as he became the Republican nominee. Why did I vote, though? Why was I so excited to vote? I voted so government people can go to prison. And I believed then, and I believe now, that electing Donald Trump as president of the United States of America gave me the best chance to see government people going to prison. I don't say that as a vengeful person, even though I probably am a vengeful person. I say that because I believe that is the only way the United States of America can be saved long term. That is, if government people go to prison now, therefore future criminals who take positions inside of the government will be too afraid to commit crimes. I don't think it's a side issue, not for me. You may feel differently. For me, sending government people to prison is not a side issue. It is the issue that, for me, will define whether or not Donald Trump 2.0 is a success or a failure. If his 4 years end and government people aren't in prison, I will consider his presidency a failure. If his presidency ends in 4 years and maybe inflation's still a little bad, but government people have gone to prison, I will consider his presidency a success. That brings me to things like the FBI. Kash Patel sworn as FBI director. Now, I understand my desires may very well be your desires. Maybe you're sitting there cheering and saying, yes, government people have to go to prison. Good, sounds good. And I understand because of that, we can all, myself included, get impatient. We want it now. So I understand that. I get that about you and I get that about me. I also understand things take time. Kash Patel's talking today about a lot of things, exposing some bad people inside the FBI. Criminal referrals. Referrals, do keep in mind, just means he makes a recommendation to Pam Bondi AG. Then once again, it's up to Pam Bondi to decide what to do about it. But okay, that sounds good. I'm all on board. Yes, I know these things take time. From what I have observed, the Trump administration, when it comes to things like sending people to prison, mass deportation, they are being very deliberate about it, trying to make sure the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, making sure they have the right things in place at the right time to do it the right way. And because I understand that, I'm not sitting here screaming at anybody. All I've seen and heard are impressive things from Kash Patel. But just to make my point crystal clear, you remember the guy in the New York field office, right? The FBI New York field office. You remember him. Hopefully you remember him. He was the one directly after the election. James Dennehy is his name. He's the big cheese in New York City. He's the FBI guy who told his agents to dig in right after Trump was elected. He's a man who views his role, well, his former role now at the FBI, as stopping the reforms the American people voted for. That's what he views. Him and most of the communists inside the federal government, they view that as being their role, not serving you, not saving the country, not chasing down crime. They view their central role as protecting American communism from the American voter. And Dennehy, when he was let go to a hero's send-off?
An extraordinary scene outside of the New York FBI office in the last hour. Assistant Director in Charge, James Dennehy, who was forced to resign under pressure this week, left the building to cheers from hundreds of his colleagues and the sound of bagpipes. He was forced out after clashing with Donald Trump's Justice Department after the removal of senior FBI leaders and requests for the names of agents who worked on the January 6 cases. He told those gathered that he will be their, quote, best cheerleader on the outside.
Just to be clear, doesn't matter your thoughts on Trump, Republican, Democrat. Donald Trump got elected president of the United States of America. Pam Bondi's the attorney general. She is most definitely over the FBI. She told James Dennehy that he must deliver documents to her. James Dennehy, being a committed communist inside of the government, decided he was going to resist that order. He then got fired for resisting that order, and he didn't walk out of the building with a hoodie over his head in disgrace, moving to Montana to change his name. He walked out of the building to bagpipes and a bunch of other communists at the FBI celebrating him on the way out the door. The rot is so deep inside of this federal government, even if we have the most committed Trump administration we've ever had in this country, I'm still not sure they will be capable of cleaning it out in 4 years. But just know the cuts must be very, very deep, and they must do things that are going to shock you. These people have to go to prison. If they are not sent to prison, retirement's not near enough. If they are not sent to prison, then we're just going to get another Democrat in there at some point in time who's going to do all the same things, if not worse. And the communists inside of the government will do it without fear. If government people do not go to prison, we cannot save the United States of America. I don't care how secure the border is, how good inflation gets, how low taxes are. We cannot save the United States of America without government people going to prison. Once your government has become an evil criminal organization the way ours are, well, the only way out of that is sending criminals to prison. You can't break up the American mafia without sending mobsters to prison, and you can't save the United States of America without sending FBI agents to prison. Ever heard of Elvis Chan? Sure that you have. You know, the Elvis Chan who took his position as special agent and used it to ensure that a damaging story of Hunter Biden did not see the light of day on Facebook. That way Joe Biden could win an election. You know, this Elvis Chan.
I was very involved. Our field office, FBI San Francisco, was very involved in helping to protect the U.S. elections in 2020. And I think we can all agree, or I think many of us can agree, that it was a very safe election. We talked with all of these entities I mentioned regularly, at least on a monthly basis, and right before the election, probably on a weekly basis, right? If they were seeing anything unusual, if we were seeing anything unusual, sharing intelligence with technology companies, with social media companies, so that they could protect their own platforms, right?
See how smug he is? Not afraid at all. Look at how proud of himself he is. We can all agree it was pretty safe. Used his position as special agent in the Federal Bureau of Investigation to electioneer on behalf of Democrats and ensure Donald Trump could not win re-election, brags about it on camera. Firings are not near enough. I'm happy to hear the things Kash Patel said today. I choose to believe at this point in time that they are being deliberate so they can ensure these things are done right, so that people, when arrested, will be arrested the right way, tried the right way, convicted the right way. These things take time. You have to check the proper boxes. I'm choosing to believe that is what is currently going on, and I choose to believe that because there is no other way to save the country except by sending these people to federal prison. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. We have so much more to get to today. Now, I need to tell you what happened to me. You know, I woke up at 4:30 a.m. this morning. Why? I was a little tired last night. Kids were doing homework. It's exams this week. Ab was reading a book. And I know it makes me sound lame, but it was 8 o'clock. I decided I wanted to go to bed. I know that's pathetic. I poured myself a little cup of hot chocolate with dream powder from Beam. It's got the natural things in it that help you sleep. I went to sleep. I woke up at 4:30 this morning, 8 hours, ready to take on the day. So energized. That's what dream powder will do for you. Want to go to bed at 8:30? Go to bed at 8:30. Go sleep like a little baby. Shopbeam.com/Jesse Kelly. Get you up to 40% off. We'll be back.
We have a dream, and you know what the dream is? We're going to move the Department of Education. We're going to move education into the states so that the states, instead of bureaucrats working in Washington, so that the states can run education.
Yes, wonderful. Good for Trump. And like I said in the beginning, it's wild. People complain that nobody voted for this. Donald Trump campaigned on this. He didn't slip one by you after he got elected president. Told you that's what he was going to do. The American people heard him, voted for it, and now we're actually getting what we voted for, which is really weird. Joining me now, my friend Ned Ryun, author of the wonderful book, American Leviathan. Ned, my goodness, I can't even imagine how thrilled you must be at this exact moment.
I really am, Jesse. This to me is one of the most important things that I think's happened in decades in D.C., in which Donald Trump, as you pointed out, made it very clear on the campaign what he was going to do. He painted in big, bold, bright colors on what he intended to do, and the American people voted him in resoundingly. And I think we're off to a good start with this Doge initiative under Elon. But I have to tell you, Jesse, this is a great start. We're nowhere near where we need to be. The fact, though, that he has made it very clear that he wants to shut down the Department of Education, fantastic. I don't think the Trump administration will be a success unless he shuts down at least one department, if not multiples, and makes them cease to exist. This, to me, is the existential crisis for this country because, Jesse, I know that China's a threat. There's all these other things that we're dealing with on the international stage. But I think the greatest threat to American prosperity, to American freedom, to our way of life, is actually the administrative state, this massive bureaucracy that I think is crushing our prosperity, crushing our freedoms. And what Donald Trump has is a singular moment in history. You have someone that is a true colossus of American politics who has the political and moral courage necessary to take on this government and crush it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Ned. And I don't think that you can reasonably look at anything else going on in the world and think there's a bigger danger to the freedom, to the prosperity of the American people than the communists that reside within our criminal federal government, which brings me to a huge concern I have. In fact, Linda McMahon pretty much addressed this. Here she was.
Is this the first step on the road to a total shutdown?
Yes, actually it is, because that was the president's mandate. This directive to me clearly is to shut down the Department of Education, which we know we'll have to work with Congress, to get that accomplished. But what we did today was to take the first step of eliminating what I think is bureaucratic bloat. And that's not to say that a lot of the folks, it's a humanitarian thing too. A lot of the folks that are there, they're out of a job. But we wanted to make sure that we kept all of the right people and the good people to make sure that the outward-facing programs, the grants, the appropriations that come from Congress, all of that are being met, and none of that's going to fall through the cracks.
Ned, we need Congress, and boy, do I hate saying those words, but for a lot of the permanent things you want done and I want done, we need the useless losers in Congress, and that's a problem.
It is a problem, Jesse, and I've got a documentary coming out next week on American Leviathan, and I think people are going to walk away from it and realize, in many ways, Congress is the problem. They have created the administrative state in many ways by subdelegating their legislative authority to them. They blindly fund this massive bureaucracy without demanding and getting real oversight and responsiveness from these unelected bureaucrats. And Congress has proved itself to be weak and feckless in the face of what I believe to be an authoritarian form of government with the administrative state, unelected bureaucrats doing the real governing. So the one thing that has to happen is Congress is going to have to find the political courage, again, it's kind of in short supply, to actually take back their legislative authority and actually govern, which, Jesse, the problem is they're going to have to make hard decisions. And they are very comfortable with this current dynamic in D.C. in which there's an appearance of governing, but the real hard decisions and the ones that are controversial are made by these unelected bureaucrats that allows the legislators to kind of duck the hard issues and then be able to go back and get reelected to then come back and be in D.C. again for another 2 to 6 years. It's a very convenient setup, but it is not in anywhere near what our founders intended in regards to representative government in which our legislators were supposed to legislate. But I'll say one last thing on this. Linda McMahon says that they're going to shut down the Department of Education. They need to shut it down. They need to actually blow the building up, raise it to the ground, and then Trump needs to build his garden of heroes over it. For a whole host of reasons, Jesse, it has to be symbolic. Trump has to destroy and shatter the administrative state. There has to be a symbol of it. He has to level it to the ground and then build something over it that actually represents the greatness of America and our founding and our constitutional republic. So I think it'd be a great place to put the Garden of Heroes.
Gosh, you just tell me where to sign up for that. Ned, what is this documentary stuff? Your book's awesome. What is it? Your what?
So I really wanted to have conversations with senators, with congressmen, with people that have been in D.C. to really show the American people this is how D.C. actually operates. And I think people are going to be a little taken aback when they understand the reality of how D.C. operates. And truly, when Elon Musk a few weeks ago, Jesse, said, we started waste, fraud, and abuse, and now I really understand we're dealing with the rule of bureaucrats. Well, that was the whole point. And that was what was always intended for the last 100 years. And when you have these conversations I have with Jim Banks and Rick Scott and Marsha Blackburn, I think people are going to walk away and understand the reality of what is taking place in D.C. It has nothing to do with a constitutional republic, has nothing to do with representative democracy. And the true end of the administrative state, Jesse, I love what Trump's doing. I love what Elon Musk is doing. The true end of the administrative state will come when the American people have full clarity on what is taking place and decide we are done with this. And when they finally have clarity on what's taking place and say we're done, I think that's the beginning of the end of the administrative state.
Ned, how do I watch this? Why have I not been sent this yet? Where do I find this?
It's launching Monday. It will be anywhere and everywhere, Jesse. I'll be throwing it up on YouTube.
Okay.
It will be available to anybody for free because I want the message to get out for people to fully understand. This is a paradigm shift, and I hate the word paradigm, but I'm going to use it, that people have to understand and have their thinking shifted on what's going on in this country. This is not about waste, fraud, and abuse. That is the poisonous fruit of a poisonous tree. The tree must be destroyed. It must be shattered. It must be uprooted. But the American people need to fully understand what's going on in this country and what's going on in D.C. specifically.
Amen. I'm going to start using that word paradigm. It makes it sound like I went to college. Ned, thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate you as always. All right. Government just passed the CR. Thomas Massie was against it. This great man, great congressman. A lot of the great ones were for it, like Scott Perry. Scott Perry, congressman from Pennsylvania, joins us next. We'll ask him about that. Before he joins me, not joining me. He's joining me in a minute. Before he does join me, I'm going to talk to you about my watch. In fact, I'm going to brag about my watch. See, this is not just a nice looking watch. Of course it's that. My wife loves it. This is a Wasson watch. See a little W in there? And Wasson watch shares my values. It's not just a nice looking watch. Of course, from the outside looking in, you don't know that. People look and they say, wow, Jesse, nice watch. Hey, that's a nice watch. But you see, Wasson watch is special to me, not because it looks good. That's a nice side benefit. Wasson watch is special to me because they're pro-life. They're pro-Second Amendment, pro-America. Why? United States Marine. Paul is a United States Marine. He fought for this country. You see, they're not shy about their beliefs, about their belief in God, their belief in what is good. They are loud about that. And I believe that companies like that should be rewarded with our business. That's what I believe. So next time you go watch shopping, hopefully that's tonight, great gifts, I might add, be purposeful with it. Get a Wasson watch. WassonWatch.com, promo code Jesse gets you 10% off. WassonWatch.com, promo code Jesse. We'll be back. Okay, so the House passed a continuing resolution, and I don't really fall on one side of this or the other for the simple fact that there's a lot of decent people seem to be on both sides of the whole thing. Well, at least there's one. Thomas Massie was a no, but there's a lot of great ones who were a yes. We've already talked about this before, and Scott Perry is one of the good ones, one of the few good ones we have in the House of Representatives. He was a yes. Let's talk about the CR, where we're at on everything going forward with Congressman Scott Perry of the great state of Pennsylvania. Congressman, okay, you're generally a big fat no on things like
Correct.
this. Why yes on this one?
So thanks for the opportunity, Jesse. By the way, we love the show. So the reason for this is, look, I went to Washington to stop the confiscation of all our money and the bankrupting of our country and the bankrupting of Americans, right? And so if you're going to save money, look, if the Democrats would actually ever vote to save money, I would probably vote with them, but they never do. So in this case, we're actually cutting some funding. We're freezing spending. And anytime you're freezing spending because of inflation and everything else that goes on in Washington, D.C., you're actually saving some money. It's not a lot, but look, we never save any. So it's some. So number one, saving money. If you don't mind who gets the credit for something, you can do a lot. So, but the only way to get to that point was to vote for this thing. So that's number one. Number two, the administration. So who am I talking about? President Trump, Elon Musk, Russ Vought over at the Office of Management and Budget said, look, if you pass this thing, we're going to do the cutting. You can't, because you got to pass this CR and you're going to need some Democrat votes to do it. You can't cut anything because they won't vote for anything then. But if you do it, we will do the cutting. Well, I'm for the cutting. I don't care who does it as long as somebody does it. So that's number two. Number three, it stops an omnibus. And I'm going to tell you, there were many in Congress, many in congressional leadership that were already working on an omnibus. We're not for that. So this is better than that. This kills the omnibus. Remember, they tried to do one right before Christmas. Elon got a hold of it. A bunch of us were screaming, but he's got a lot of followers. When he hooked onto it and said, this is crazy, everybody said, yes, this is crazy. Now this would be twice in a row we've killed it. So hopefully we're ending the omnibuses forever. Gets rid of all the earmarks. People say, well, that's a couple $1 million. No, that's billions of dollars of jack wagon programs that we don't need. It gets rid of them. And finally, the big thing, it gets us past this hurdle where the Democrats were hoping to stop the momentum, and it gets us to where we really want to be, where the real fight is, which is reconciliation, where we don't need any Democrats, but where we got to force Republicans and Democrats to actually cut federal spending so that the bond market can react, so that the housing market can react, and so that prices overall can come down.
Where are we at? Let's talk about the political gamesmanship of all this now with the United States Senate. It's one thing for the House to pass it. It's quite another for the Senate to pass it. We do need Democrat votes for this or the government shuts down, right?
That's exactly right. And so for the first time in my time in Congress, we have done what conservatives have always wanted us to do. Pass something that is as much conservative as we can get and then leave town. That's what the Senate does. They pass something and then they go away. Well, the House, you got to pass it because this is all we got. Well, finally, for once in my life, the House has passed the bill and we left town. If the Senate Democrats don't want to vote for this, well, God bless them. They can explain to their constituents with all their government programs why they're not getting their government program money. And if they want to do that, every single time, the worst thing that could happen, you could get cancer, you could die of old age, you could have a car wreck. But what's even worse than all those is a government shutdown. Well, now the ball's in their court. What are they going to do?
Let's talk about the Department of Education. Obviously, I'm cheering these cuts, as I'm sure you are. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm pretty sure I can reasonably say that. We are reducing the Department of Education, getting this thing back to the states where it always should have been. But the complete elimination of these departments has to come from Congress, right? I mean, Trump, Elon, Linda McMahon, they can do so much, but Congress has to do something. So will it?
So that's the rub, right? We want the president. First of all, there's no mention whatsoever about education in the Constitution, the United States Constitution. This is totally within the purview of the states, right? So we're right to be taking a look. Let's not forget the fact that ever since the advent of the Department of Education, our test scores have gone down, where the price has gone up for education. So it's been a complete failure. And while the administration can do everything it can, at some point, if Congress doesn't act, the next Democrat in charge is just going to revive it all. Now, the problem's going to be, even if we can get the votes in the House, and there's, look, there are Republicans that probably won't want to vote for that. I'm just saying, but there are going to be Democrats that absolutely will not ever vote for something like that. And of course, some of those reside in the Senate. So the only way you're going to be able to get that is to attach it to something that Democrats are desperately wanting. Let's say like California disaster relief or something like that, where they desperately want it, and you've got to put them in a bad position to have to vote for this to get that, which is what Democrats always do to Republicans, but Republicans never do to Democrats. So I hope we take the opportunity to get some real wins by forcing them to stand up in front of their voters and say, I'm voting for things that aren't in the Constitution because we think that's how it has to be. They take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution and then snub their nose at it every single day. We have to put them on record with that stuff.
No doubt about it. I'm assuming they're teachers union backers, which really are the beating heart of the Democrat Party. I'm assuming they're going to have a little something to say about a bill like that, California money or no.
Yeah, I'm sure they are, but let's remember, they're the teachers union. They're not the children's union, right? The children's union is their parents and the rest of society fighting for what's good for the children. And the Department of Education can't demonstrably show that it's done anything good for our children or our society. So while the teachers union is going to be there for the union dues and the continued support of the hard left, we have to be advocates for our children and for our nation's future and stand up for them. And I'm sure it's going to be a fight, but it's a worthy fight.
Did you ever get your phone back? A lot of people forget that story. I most definitely do not. Why don't you recap that for us? You get your hands back on that thing?
I did get my phone back. However, the FBI and the Department of Justice kept the data. And Jesse, you can't imagine this, but somewhere along the line, they just made some mistakes of putting that stuff out online, and when they weren't supposed to. And then when we said, hey, you can't put that online, they said, oh, sorry, our bad. and then took it down. But by that time, all the reporters had screenshotted all the stuff. You know how this goes, right? The intimidation and the weaponization of the federal government when the Democrats and the left are in charge goes on unabated.
Congressman, I know it's not really what we're focusing on right now because we're talking about funding bills, but this is why I say we have to have people arrested, government people arrested and thrown in prison. I don't want Democrats arrested and rounded up. I'm not saying that, but when people commit crimes like what you just described, that's got to be a crime. You can't take a position at the FBI, jack a Republican congressman's phone, leak his crap online, and then say, oh, whoopsie, and then get off with probation or getting to retire early. You can't save a country that way. These people have to go to prison.
These people, there needs to be accountability. There needs to be an investigation at the Department of Justice. As you know, Congress has done several investigations. I think they have come up short, but we can only refer charges. Now, in the past, of course, Merrick Garland was there, so referring charges was meaningless. So we ought to revisit some of those investigations, but we need the Department of Justice to go through and do the investigation into these breaches of your privacy and your civil rights, and not just of mine. There are many people across the country that the federal government has been weaponized against. I'm talking about guys like Scott Smith in Virginia, who had the gall to question the school board's allowance of his daughter to be molested in a bathroom, or Mark Houck in Philadelphia, who was arrested under the FACE Act and in the wee hours of the morning under the gunpoint and all that stuff. Those things have to be investigated. Somebody is responsible for those actions, and there needs to be accountability for it. And the American people need to see that so they can begin to trust law enforcement again, that it's not going to be used for political purposes.
Tell me about abolishing the Federal Reserve. I want to talk about something wonderful. That sounds fantastic to me. Tell me about that.
Well, that's indeed, that's a Thomas Massie one-page bill that many of us, myself included, have signed on to. As you know, the Federal Reserve is a private organization of the well-connected, moneyed people in the country with one job, which is to control inflation. Unfortunately, it's become political like everything else. They want to keep their job. And so instead of controlling inflation by telling the truth, they just try and do whatever Joe Biden or Barack Obama tells them to do. And of course, they don't do what President Trump asks them to do. Inflation runs rampant. We keep on spending too much money. They raise interest rates, and people can't afford to buy homes or pay for electricity bills. It is an organization that has long overlived, or it probably should have never existed in the first place. Let's face that. And, at a minimum, why can't we just audit the Fed? Why can't we at least do that so we know what the hell they're doing with our money?
Yeah, how about that? Congressman, thank you so much. I'm glad at least you got your phone back. Appreciate you, sir. Carol Roth's going to talk to us. I'm going to talk to her about auditing the Fed. I bet you Carol's just going to come out of her chair when I ask her about that. Before I do that, let's talk about saving you some money, because the Fed certainly isn't going to take care of your money. You know that. We're all looking for ways. What about $1,000 a year? Average family, when they switch to Pure Talk, they pocket $1,000 a year. We, a family of four, we had 4 lines. We switched from T-Mobile to Pure Talk. Our bill got cut in half, clean in half. That's what I'm talking about. For the same service. In fact, I didn't even switch my phone. This is the same phone I had. You don't have to switch your phone. You don't have to switch your phone number. It's all handled by phone and mail. Pure Talk makes it easy. They save you a fortune. They're the patriotic cell phone company. There's just no reason not to switch, especially when they're on the same network. There's no reason not to switch. Go to puretalk.com/JesseTV and switch today. We'll be back. Well, good news on the inflation front. And no, I don't expect you to do backflips or tummy tucks or whatever it is people do when they're excited, but it's good news about inflation. We were expected at 2.9%. It came in at 2.8%. So I guess your money, well, never mind, you still got poorer, but not as poor as they thought you were going to be. Joining me now, Carol Roth, author of so many wonderful books, including You Will Own Nothing. Carol, I'm super excited that I am less poor than I thought I was going to be this time of the year. So I guess that's something.
Well, Jesse, there would be no inflation, and then inflation is transitory. And I guess if you go out on a long enough curve, inflation will be transitory. So, yes, we should celebrate a little bit of good news here, a little bit of working our way back to what they think is an acceptable level of inflation. I would argue 0% is an acceptable level of inflation. I want to keep my price stability and my purchasing power, but, they feel like you shouldn't do that. But I guess the good news here is that things, at least for the time being, are working them back towards something a bit more palatable. And I say the time being because we still have a lot of issues underneath the surface, and there is going to have to be a way to deal with them, what I like to call a release valve. When they fix something over here, there needs to be a release valve on the other side to make it all balance out. And so I do think that we will expect over the next several years some sort of a return to higher inflation, or at least this kind of level being a little bit more sticky. But in terms of all of the policy chaos going on with Trump and friends, it may give a little bit more of a kick to the Fed to maybe shift their policy, move it in the direction that Trump is trying to do to get a little bit more relief. Whether any of this works is a whole other story, but that's certainly what they're trying to push towards.
Carol, what are these things underneath the surface? That sounded so Jaws-like and ominous. What's going on?
We're going to need a bigger boat, Jesse, for sure. Things like the fact that we have debt to GDP over 120%, which is an emerging market balance sheet. We have deficits to GDP in the range of 6 to 7%, which is a wartime level, almost double what is typical. Things like a very high, not in the context of history, but at least in the context of the last 15 or so year interest rate on the 10-year yield, and that reflects how much we can refinance our debt for, which is why we're now paying more in terms of interest on the debt than we are in terms of things like our defense spending, which is not really great for a country. The strength of the U.S. dollar, not again against a basket of groceries, but against other currencies around the world. That has come down a little bit with some of these machinations by the Trump administration. But there are all of these things that work in concert. And anytime somebody in the administration tries to do one thing, it potentially could be impacted by something else. So we've talked about before, you try to cut government spending through DOGE and you try to narrow that deficit. But if that leads us to a recession, or we see the stock market come off as it has, and we get less in terms of government receipts, then it could actually end up widening the deficit, which means we have more to finance and we create this sort of vicious cycle and potentially, wonderful things like debt spirals or sovereign debt crises or whatnot. So underneath the surface, Jaws, the financial Jaws does remain, and, make sure you've got your little life vest on for sure.
Carol, what do you make of the stock market in the dips that have been having? Now, me personally, like a sane human being, I don't wake up and check it every day. I most definitely don't check it when it dips. I fire and forget. I send it off and I forget it's ever there. And I'm a much happier person for it. But I do get panicked emails and texts from friends and family. Did you see what happened today? So what does Carol Roth say about it?
Well, Carol Roth's going to take a victory lap on Jesse Kelly's show, which is, I guess, the reason why potentially I get invited back here. A couple of months ago, we had a session together, and I warned everyone. I said that the market was overvalued and that we could see it come off. And, like I do every time on this show, Jesse, I tell you things and then they end up happening. So that was, somewhat predictable. We have a very overvalued stock market that was looking for a reason to correct itself. And Trump gave them that reason in terms of the tariffs, which I think at first the market took as maybe this is just a temporary thing. And then as they've increased, he's gone from being interpreted, seriously to literally, which, isn't usually how people interpret Trump. It's usually more seriously and not literally. So I think that has been the catalyst for things to move. I think this year is going to be very volatile. So you can see things continue to go down. You'll probably see times when it continues to go up. I think that those movements and machinations are the things that you need to be concerned about. But you never want to be the person who sells at the bottom either. And, it really kind of depends on your personal situation. So I will do the typical, this is not financial advice, but if you're somebody who is planning to retire, in the near future, and you're worried short term about this volatility in the market, that's something you should be talking to your advisor. There should be a plan in place, and you should have a diversified portfolio that accounts for having a shortened time frame versus people who are younger and have a much longer time frame to ride it out. Because I still do believe over time, given our financial situation, that there will be a bias towards things that resemble inflation or loss of purchasing power or asset inflation altogether over time. And I do think while maybe not the real value, but the nominal value of stocks will continue to rise over long periods of time. And so you want to have the appropriate hedging in place. And again, that depends on your personal risk and your situation and your time frame.
Carol, the Fed. We just had Congressman Scott Perry on. He wants to end the Fed, which sounds wonderful to me, but at the very least, he wants to audit the Fed. What say you?
So, I'm somebody who, focuses more on ending the Fed's powers than ending the Fed, because when you have somebody who can come in and make, monetary policy decisions and shift around the money supply and do all of these things that really have enabled the government to continue to spend in a very irresponsible manner, that's a bad thing. But when you just say end the Fed, then those powers remain up for grabs. And so the only thing worse than having the Federal Reserve have those powers would be if those went to Congress or something like that. So, it's a very easy way that we have to potentially control the money supply. You can have something that's tied to a proxy for growth. Maybe it's tied to growth in the GDP, and the money supply is tied to that, something that Milton Friedman called the K% rule, many, many years ago. And there are a lot of economists with ideas around that. So you don't really need the Fed for that. There are a lot of things that happen in the market that the banks could sort out amongst themselves. But the reality is, given the tenuous situation we're in, all of a sudden pulling out the central bank of the reserve currency and trading currency until we have that all settled out probably doesn't go so well for us either. So I think more oversight, auditing, maybe limiting and reining in some of their powers. But unless Congress is going to do their part, unless they're going to get serious about fixing their piece, none of this is going to matter anyway. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm not sure if there's the political will to have any of it fixed. So, well,
that makes one of us, Carol. I'm quite sure there's not the political will. So, all right, you were really, really hot about the small business issue last time. Did that ever get resolved? Go ahead and explain what that was.
Yes. So this is something that, thank you for lending your platform on a consistent basis, over the last year or so. But we had these small businesses who were being hounded by the Financial Crimes Division of Treasury to register with them, in the spirit of stopping cartels and money launderers and terrorists, because I'm sure that, all of those people were happy to register with the Financial Crimes Division of Treasury. And the fines that were put in place, things like jail time and up to $600, almost $600 a day and growing, that was just egregious. It was just an absolute insane thing. So it's something that many folks have been working on for quite some time, including me. I testified in front of Congress about this last year. And finally, the Trump administration, Scott Bessent says, hey, we're going to step up. We're going to be a supporter of Main Street. We're going to support deregulation. And finally, they came out at the end of February that was finalized on March 2nd with a notice that says, okay, if you are a U.S. citizen, or you have a US-based business, meaning you don't have foreign ownership and you're not a foreign business, we are not going to force this. So even though they have not updated their website since the FinCEN website, it is on the Treasury website. And so you no longer have to do this, which is great. And this is a huge relief to small business. However, two things. One is that it has to be codified by Congress, because if this is left to hang out there and be at the discretion of Treasury, you and I both know exactly what's going to happen. When you get a different set of people in charge, they're just going to put it back in place. The second issue is that there are a lot of small businesses who have already complied, who have that information at risk for, cyber attacks or whatever it is that the government is going to do. So we need a statement that they're going to purge that data. So it's very good news. We're getting things done. We're moving in the right direction, but we cannot relent now, because we have to kill the cockroaches. You can't leave a couple in the nest, because they're just going to crawl back out again.
Amen. Gosh, I hate cockroaches. Carol, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We have Lighten the Mood next. All right, it is time to lighten the mood. And you've heard me say it a bunch on the show. I'll just say it again. Democrats embracing the tranny stuff, no matter how you feel about it, is the dumbest political move I've ever seen in my entire life. It weirds everyone out. No one's on board with it. It's the tiniest sliver of the population. Everyone else is grossed out, weirded out. You just look like a nutball. And we have a tranny person in Congress now. His name's Tim McBride. Sorry, he changed his name. Sarah McBride. Still a dude. Dresses up like a chick, pretends to be a chick, still a dude. And Republican Congressman Keith Self basically calls him Mr. Just calls him a dude. And Democrats freaked about it.
Recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Keating, also wonderful.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat your introduction again, please?
Yes, we have set the standard on the floor of the House, and I'm simply...
What is that standard, Mr. Chairman? Would you repeat what you just said when you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America? Please.
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this
hearing. You will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
This hearing is adjourned.
Keep riding that wave, Democrats. See you tomorrow. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.